This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. Immortals of Aveum really had a bit of an unfair launch. This new first-person shooter came out, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you had never heard of it at all. It basically had a shadow drop of sorts. You could blame this a bit on when it launched, with it being right at the end of summer. Baldur's Gate 3 was taking up much of the oxygen before that, and then all focus seemed to be shifted towards Starfield, with little to no time left for Immortals. Now you might think that this happened because of the publisher behind it wanting to potentially hide a bad game, but after playing it myself, this is not a bad game at all. There are some flaws that I have noticed so far, but nothing that was detrimental to the overall enjoyment. It has familiar elements that we have seen with a lot of AAA games within that space, along with some freshness as well. I like Immortals, and I'm having a good time with this title, and I plan to continue to keep shedding more light on it. There are a group of gamers that long for more single-player experiences, and while we do see a good amount of these within the AAA space, there was a time where we were worried where everyone wanted to focus on making live service type games. Thankfully, there has been more of a shift back to single-player games. Live service type stuff has its place, especially if done well, but when everyone is trying to go after it, it can make the gaming space seem a bit dull. The same can be said too when even within the single-player games, many of the big budget ones want to have these huge and sometimes overlonged experiences. I definitely appreciate the content and delivery on this, but this makes me wish we had more linear games. Stuff I had a few generations ago, and we would see quite often back then. Sadly, whenever linear gets brought up within the gaming space, especially from the game's media, it is seen as a negative. This is really dumb considering that linear is not inherently a bad thing. The same can be said with open world games, but when the space is lacking in one area, it makes me at least want more of the thing that we're not seeing, and in this case, it's linear titles. Immortals is a linear game, way more direct, and a game that doesn't want to take all of your time, but rather some of it, and that doesn't mean that there isn't room for some good nook and cranny type exploration. The direct nature of this title, exploration, and especially the combat are what kept me coming back to it. The first few chapters are probably the most linear, as the game is more focused on getting you into its narrative, setting the stage for the events, and launching the missions and quests for your main hero. As you complete the story missions, the game does open up a bit more, but the attention is always on the next story mission. This doesn't mean that the game moves at a lightning-type pace, but rather the game does allow the experience to breathe a bit and let the player take it all in as you open up new areas. I really liked how there were plenty of additional side paths to go down, to find more useful items and treasures. The game does do a good job at hinting at this type of stuff, but it's up to the player and their choice to see if they want to go down those side paths. Pretty much all the time you would find another set of enemies to fight, or chests that always netted you with something. Again, the exploration is not expansive. It's more inspired by Metroid-like design, where you might see things that look like potential routes that you cannot access right now, but you'll want to come back later on. And if you choose to come back, it then deepens the area and the experience itself. Some side stuff can get repetitive for sure, but opening up new areas and old locations was always rewarding, and I especially enjoyed the side challenge rooms, as they often put the combat system front and center, which is good because that's probably the best area of the game. When you break it down, the combat system is a first-person shooter, but in Immortals, the characters don't use guns, they use magic, so you'll be fighting with a variety of spells to survive each of the enemy encounters. You have your blue spell, which is your precision shot type weapon. It's a single shot and provides the best range, whereas the green spell is more of your machine gun, and the red spell is a shotgun type attack. Now this plays a bit into the gear, but you can also change how these operate as well. For example, the shotgun can have this very short-range big blast, or it can fire off these short-range like blasts, but you get 3 of them to use and they go a bit further. You'll frequently be switching between your spells while in a fight. As you get further into the game, you'll fight enemies that will have colored shields, and you need to use the same color spell to take them down quickly. You are juggling a lot while in combat, and it's always very engaging. Thankfully, the game does a good job of adding on more mechanics and abilities. So no, you are not just thrown in there, but rather eased into all of it with the new additions. Then you have the more powerful spells that require to use some mana to pull them off. These can be anything from creating a huge fire blast to creating some homing explosions. Equipment furthers your options, with your whip of sorts allowing you to pull in enemies, and then you can shoot out green blobs to slow down foes, along with sending out a beam to interrupt enemies as they cast spells on you. You even have a melee that helps to stagger foes as well. Again, this all might seem like a lot, but essentially you have a lot of options at your disposal, and then the fun comes from as you quickly pivot in almost every fight you're in. Defense-wise, you have a dash and a shield. While the shield is activated, you cannot use any of your equipment, but you can still perform your spells, so you essentially have mobile cover, and the shield will eat any direct attack. Eventually the shield will break and you need to recharge it, and I never got tired of the cool slow motion effect that would happen whenever an enemy broke your shield. This is cool to look at for sure, but it also gives the player a few seconds to reassess their next move too. I am having a good time with this title, but I have had some flaws that need to be brought up as well. For one, you will notice graphical and shadow type issues that will pop up in some of the cutscenes. These are distracting and take away from the generally good look to the game, but hopefully these can all be ironed out in a future patch. I have had a few instances where enemies will just stand there and not engage me. Again, it takes you out of the moment, but it doesn't kill the game. And so far, I'm really enjoying the narrative. There are plenty of cliches, but I am enjoying Jack's journey. And I like how the cutscenes generally pull the camera back, so you can enjoy it all in third person. I do take issue with some of the writing. There was a dumb moment that I will elaborate on in my full review when I discuss spoilers. If you have played the game, you probably know what I'm referring to, but something that I both appreciate and think could have been done a bit better is the humor. I wasn't expecting the humorous side to the game, and in many cases it works very well, and in the few cases of physical humor, those are good too. But when it doesn't land, it can make the line delivery feel cringy and maybe like it's a bit forced. Again, it's mostly a mixed bag when it comes to the humor, but at least for me, it more than often tips in the direction of landing rather than missing. And this might seem like an odd complaint, but why do Western game developers not like showing women, being women-like? Many of the women in this game are so masculine that it's a bit silly at times. We have one character with Abby-like arms as a good example. This might just be a personal preference, but it looks like I need to look to JRPGs for something more traditional. Again, this is not a game-breaking type of a thing, but something that I noticed while playing it. Immortals of Aveum is a title that I'm glad that I sought after, especially considering how much I'm enjoying it. The combat system very much is where the game shines the best, and the nook and cranny exploration with Metroid elements provides good breaks from the action. And I only briefly touched on the loot and light crafting system here too, along with a set of skill trees that, while they don't offer different builds, but the room to choose what you prefer to unlock first. Is this game God's gift to man? No. Is it the worst thing to come out of 2023? Not at all. It's a really good title and definitely shows that these developers deserved a bit more. I am a little more than halfway through it, so unless the second half of the game is god-awful, I'm probably going to say pretty positive with my opinion on this one. Have you played Immortals? Are you interested in it? Let me know all of this in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.